Okay, so he now talks about his first crossing of the Rhine, and this is what he says, quote, "On the conclusion of the German war, Caesar thought it advisable for several reasons to cross the Rhine. His strongest motive was to make the Germans less inclined to come over into Gaul by giving them reason to be alarmed on their own account, and showing them that Roman armies could and would advance across the river. A show of force. Another consideration was that the cavalry division which, as mentioned above, the Usurpates and the Tencteri sent across the Meuse, in quest of plunder and corn, having taken no part in the battle and retired over the Rhine after the rout of their fellow countrymen, entered the territory of the Sugambri and joined forces with them. And when Caesar sent an embassy to the Sugambri to demand the surrender of men who had made war on him and on Gaul, they answered that the Rhine was the limit of Roman sovereignty. If Caesar held that the Germans had no right to cross into Gaul against his wishes, how could he claim any domination or authority beyond the Rhine? A third reason that Caesar wanted to cross the Rhine was that the Ubi, the only people in Germany who had sent envoys to Caesar entering into alliance with him and given hostages, were earnestly entreating him to come and defend them from the oppression of the Suebi, or, if the public business with which he was occupied made that impossible, merely to bring his army across the river, which would suffice to deliver them from immediate danger and assure their security for the future. They said that by the defeat of Ariovistus, and by this latest victory, the Roman army had gained such renown and reputation, even among the most distant peoples of Germany, that the mere knowledge of their alliance with Rome would be enough to give them protection. They undertook to provide a large fleet of boats for the transportation of the army." End quote. Of course, just to say, the Rhine River, I'll put pictures up and things, and in that part of Europe, the Rhine River is really, really wide. It's not fordable in any way. You can't just hope to wade your horses through it. It's a serious barrier, very serious barrier. Okay, Caesar goes on here. "For these reasons, Caesar had determined to cross the Rhine, but a crossing by means of boats seemed to him both too risky and beneath his dignity as a Roman commander. Even boats would be too risky. It's too big, too choppy, too dangerous. Therefore, although the construction of a bridge presented very great difficulties on account of the breadth, depth and swiftness of the stream, he decided that he must either attempt it or give up the idea of crossing." No one had really dreamed of building a bridge across the Rhine at this point. That would have been absolutely 100% beyond the engineering skills, perhaps beyond the imagination of the Gallic and Germanic peoples. There was just no question that they could do anything of that sort. And so Caesar's going to do it. And it's sort of a show of strength, a show of domination, a show of engineering skill, a show of superiority. You are outclassed. That's what this bridge says. The narrative goes on, he says, "He took a pair of poles, 1.5 feet thick, slightly pointed at the lower ends, and of a length adapted to the varying depth of the river, and fastened them together 2 feet apart. These he lowered into the river with appropriate tackle, placed them in position at right angles to the bank, and drove them home with pile drivers, not vertically, as piles are generally fixed, but obliquely, inclined in the direction of the current. Opposite these, 40 feet lower down the river, another pair of piles were planted, similarly fixed together and inclined in the opposite direction to the current. The 2 pairs were then joined by a beam 2 feet wide, whose ends fitted exactly into the spaces between the 2 piles, forming each pair. The upper pair was kept at the right distance from the lower pair by means of iron braces, one of which was used to fasten each pile to the end of the beam, the pairs of piles being thus held apart, and each pair individually strengthened by a diagonal tie between the 2 piles. The whole structure was so rigid that, in accordance with the laws of physics, the greater the force of the current, the more tightly the piles were held in position. A series of these piles and traverse beams were carried right across the stream and connected by lengths of timber running in the direction of the bridge. On these were laid poles and bundles of sticks. In spite of the strength of the structure, additional piles were fixed obliquely to each pair of the original piles along the whole length of the downstream side of the bridge, holding them up like a buttress and opposing the force of the current. Others were fixed also a little above the bridge, so that if the natives tried to demolish it by floating down tree trunks or beams, these buffers would break the force of the impact and preserve the bridge from injury. You can only imagine the Germans watching this happen. You know, at first just bemusement. What do these crazy Romans think they're doing? And then, oh, they're building a bridge? Wow. Well, they're doing it fast as well. And it's holding. Oh my God, they're building a bridge. They're going to be able to just march straight across here. You can imagine the number of emotions that it must have been going through, slowly watching this bridge, or not all that slowly, but slowly watching this bridge happen right in front of their eyes. In the end, terrifying. Story goes on, quote, 10 days after the collection of the timber had begun, the work was completed and the army crossed over. 10 days to bridge the Rhine in the 1st century BC. Absolutely incredible engineering feat. Leaving a strong guard at each end of the bridge, Caesar marched into the territory of the Sugambri. Meanwhile, a number of tribes sent envoys with requests for peace and friendship, which Caesar graciously granted, bidding them bring hostages. But the Sugambri, who as soon as the construction of the bridge was begun, had been advised by their fugitive Usurpates and Tencteri to prepare for fight, had left their country with all their belongings and hidden themselves in forests and in uninhabited districts. So they decided to just run away. Sort of can't blame them. Don't blame them. They were outclassed by Caesar and the Romans at this point in time. Caesar remained for a few days in their territory, burning all the villages and farm buildings and cutting down the crops, and then returned to the Ubii, to whom he promised help if they were molested by the Suebi. They informed him that the Suebi, on learning from their scouts that a bridge was under construction, had convened a council, their usual procedure in such cases, and sent out word in all directions that the people should abandon their towns and hide their wives and children and property in the forests. All men capable of bearing arms had been ordered to assemble in one place, almost exactly in the middle of their territory. There they were awaiting the Romans, and had determined to fight a decisive battle on the spot. On receiving this news, Caesar recrossed the bridge into Gaul and destroyed it behind him. He had achieved all the objects for which he had come: to overawe the Germans, punish the Sugambri, and relieve the Ubri from the harassing pressure of the Suebi. And after spending a total of 18 days across the Rhine, he considered that he had done all that honour or interest required. End quote. So, wow, what a fascinating thing. After achieving this completely unique and unparalleled engineering feat of building a bridge, he then destroys it, deliberately, because Caesar wasn't ready to fight the giant, well, almost nation of the Suebi. Wasn't prepared for that. Had never really intended for that. He'd never intended to plunge deep into the heart of Germany and fight their most powerful tribe. He was just trying to shore up the French side of the Rhine, really. That was all he wanted to do. But still, most people comment on, and it's difficult not to, isn't it, the fact that he built this bridge, which overawed the Germans, certainly overawed them, terrified them, and then destroyed it, as if to say, that was nothing. As if to say, I'll build another bridge whenever I want as well. We build bridges like this all the time. It's absolutely nothing. Again, it does send the message that if you think the Rhine River protects you, like a mountain range or something, it doesn't. It doesn't. I'll build and destroy any number of bridges at the drop of a hat. Get used to it. Well, it certainly put the wind up the Suebi, didn't it? If they felt the need to muster all their fighting men, more or less. But Caesar's just not really ready for that. It's not what he wants to do at this stage. He's trying to conquer Gaul. And although, you know, he's not adverse to pushing the envelope and doing preemptive things and going above and beyond where he really should have been fighting, he's not just going to dive straight into the middle of Germany. Okay, so that's the end of the story of the first incursion across the Rhine. And just completely successful from Caesar's point of view. Basically lost hardly any men, and the fame of his prowess has now stretched far and wide. And that is a big part of winning and holding down an empire, that the subjugated people believe that you're capable of beating them in a military sense. They have to really believe that they've been conquered fair and square, and furthermore, there's nothing they can really do about it going forward. So you have to be seen to be the most badass actor in town. And well, Caesar sort of really is as well.
To watch the full video, please become a premium member at lotuseaters.com.